Good evening, everyone, and welcome to our sixth Cultural Competency Fair workshop. My name is Iman Bukhari, and I am a member of the Canadian Cultural Mosaic Foundation. We are a volunteer group working to improve race relations in Canada. Developing cultural competency is all about understanding, communicating, and effectively interacting with people from different cultural backgrounds. Although we live in a multicultural society, most of us are actually not aware of the diversity of cultures and belief systems that people hold. A lot of our education and schooling also doesn't cover ethnic minorities either. So we're hoping this fair is an opportunity for people to learn about a few different cultures. We, of course, can't cover everything, so we're hoping to give at least a few different opportunities to learn about a few cultures. This fair is an Alberta Culture Days event and is funded by the Government of Alberta, as well as some public funds generated on our website. Before we begin our event, it's incredibly important to acknowledge the land that we're on. By acknowledging the land, we are respecting the Indigenous peoples, their contribution and ways of knowing, which are reflected through the stories and songs that have lived on this land for thousands of years. This is, of course, an online event, so we may all be connecting through various different places. But nonetheless, I would like to take this opportunity to acknowledge the traditional territories of the people of the Treaty 7 region in southern Alberta, which includes the Blackfoot Confederacy, comprising of the Siksika, Piikani, and Kainai First Nations, the Tsuut'ina First Nation, and the Stoney Nakoda, including the Chiniki, Bearspaw, and Wesley First Nations. The City of Calgary is also home to the Métis Nation of Alberta, Region 3. The workshop that we're about to begin will give a brief overview about treaties across Canada that were made with Indigenous peoples and the Crown. This workshop will be recorded and will be available to all through Facebook and YouTube with closed captioning. We encourage everyone listening live to feel free to leave any comments or questions you'd like to communicate with our guest lecturer. So with that, I would like to introduce our guest lecturer, Garret Smith. He is a graduate from the Center of the Indigenous Theatre, and he was also the former interim artist director for Making Treaty 7 Cultural Society. He's also the founder of Mohkinstsis, a healing camp in downtown Calgary, where he created opportunities for Indigenous youth to reconnect with their culture. Welcome, Garret.
Hi, thank you for having me. Alrighty, so hope everything can sound quality is all right and all that jazz. So again, my name is Garret Smith. I'm originally raised from the Piikani Nation and on the Kainai Nation as well too. I've had the privilege and the honor of being able to travel over the last 10 years and study as an actor, which led to working with the Making Treaty 7 Cultural Society, which is a large source of my information that I'll be providing to everyone today as well too. That was a theater show that we had created in partnership or in collaboration with, at the time, I believe, was the largest number of elders to gather since the signing of the treaty, actually, in this territory in Treaty 7. A gentleman who passed away, unfortunately, a few years ago, his name is Michael Green. He worked on a grant to get together to tell the stories of our treaties, and specifically the story of what led up to our signing of Treaty 7 here. And so that show went on for a few years, and out of that came a children's show. And a lot of the information that we discovered while researching and going into the rehearsal process leading up to that, we discovered a lot of the information and a lot of the experiences were fairly universal in terms of what happened on our land here, what happened to our people. It was very similar across the board in terms of the areas in Treaty 6, Treaty 4, and beyond. So as we jump into it here, one of the things that I want to acknowledge is actually a lot of the work that the people from Making Treaty 7 Cultural Society did and it's every time I think about it, I just kind of I get a bit of a lump in my throat. So excuse me here. It was just an amazing experience, and so I hope to share some of that with you here as well too. And yeah, so we'll just jump right into it. So yeah, if we can get the first slide up there, actually, please. Right on. So one of the things that we wanted to that my community, as I was asking, how can I bring up this material? How can I start this? The best way that they had told me was to talk about the events that led up to the signing of the treaty. And this image here is, I think, fairly self-explanatory. It speaks largely to the extinction of the buffalo, which was the main catalyst for our desire, or not even desire. Excuse me. Sorry, I'm just shuffling through some of my notes here as well too here. Some of the reasons that we were coerced into signing the treaty, it wasn't exactly a deal made in good faith. It wasn't exactly something where it wasn't a surrender. That's what I'm looking for. That's the word I'm looking for. Thank you. It wasn't a surrender of land or a surrender in any way, shape, or form. It was just that, a treaty as it's intended, for our people to coexist and to learn to live together here in this territory. And unfortunately, greed is something that I'm pretty sure we're all familiar with now in this society. And that was a large what we call our true enemies. Were greed and starvation, and sickness. you know um, and that's one of the references we make in the theatrical version of Making Treaty 7, that it wasn't the white man. It wasn't necessarily the white man himself, but it was these things that affect all of us. It was greed. And as we continue forward here, I'm going to be kind of pressing these traditional values that we have here. And so you can just go on to the next slide here, actually, please. Yeah. So these images here, I noticed, actually, I was watching one of the other gentlemen who was doing one of these streams here as well too, with Iman and everyone here, that he used this image as well too with the buffalo here. I can't stress you enough how much this affected and how this almost paralyzed our people. This act of a war, to literally starve out our people. It was intended that the previous image there were advertisements in the early 1800s for train rides. Once the trains were established in a lot of the areas around here, to advertise buffalo hunts that way. And the aim was to, for settlers to experience a set of sport hunting, but the purpose of it was literally to starve out our people. And so people would come out and they would shoot, and they would unwittingly realize, or unwittingly know, or unwittingly partake. Excuse me. I'm gonna take a drink of coffee here because I think I'm going a little bit too fast for my brain. Yes. So a lot of people who took part in these huntings, I'm willing to give the benefit of the doubt that they weren't exactly aware that they were taking part in an intentional genocide. And so if we can just again move forward to the next slide. Again, yeah, the railroad was really a defining factor in what brought our people to come together and talk about all these changes that are happening so rapidly. Within just a few hundred years, we were experiencing such an influx of settlers and change that we have prophecies, actually, that some of our elders talk about, that I'll reference here. And some of the events leading up to the signing of the treaty, you really won't hear a lot in the history books, but we had what we call prophecies, and I guess shamans would be the English terminology for them. But we had holy men that we understood to be very powerful. And one of the things that we were told was that there are going to be people who are coming from the ocean. And this is actually a Sutina prophecy, not necessarily a Blackfoot prophecy, but this is a Sutina prophecy actually. And it says the people are coming from across the ocean, and these people have no color to their skin. These people are going to put you, my people, in corrals. They're going to be flying. They're going to wrap the earth in iron. They're going to turn the earth inside out, and they will feed you white dust. And these are the words of an elder that really didn't have any contact with settlers at that point in time. And he had dreams that there was going to be this event, that there was going to be this coming. And so our people, we gathered, we gathered in prayer and in ceremony. And a large misconception about that time in the settlers' history books is that we were up singing and partying almost, but singing and dancing. And but we what we were actually doing was we were praying, and those prayers and those ceremonies were going on all night, and we were asking for strength, for guidance, for understanding, for courage, um, and each nation, Gaina, Siksika, Tsuut'ina, Piikani, and all of the other nations across Canada, this is what they were doing. They weren't sitting around the drum and singing songs and having a party or just a dance. Those dances at those times, those were very ceremonial, and there was a very spiritual purpose to every single one of them. And so in the record books and a lot of these treaties, you'll hear that the natives were dancing and the natives were singing at night, and that's really not actually correct. We were actually praying, and we were in the middle of ceremony that whole time. And one of the things that was referenced here from some of the old folks, we have some quotes from some of the old folks here that I'm going to read off here about what led up to them signing the treaty here. And there's no names given to some of these quotes. They're just recordings that we had found in archives and in writings and things. And so one of the quotes is, he says, "Across the river from Fort Macleod east, some of the teepees were empty, and no one was living in them. Sometimes all the people from one teepee were wiped out from smallpox, and they were struck really bad." And he's referencing the people from Fort Macleod East. And they talked about a group of Stony people who had gone hunting, setting up their hunting camp along the Niho Chango, commonly known as Flat Tops Road, or I guess in translation, that would mean steep road southwest. That group, I guess they were hit real hard by the epidemics, and they were entirely wiped out. And today there's still a marked gravesite present in that area. And so there's all these stories and recollections of families dying and literally being wiped out. There's names here from families that have been, for lack of a better phrasing, made extinct. And just to give an example of some of the names, that are no longer with us, and again, I apologize for my Blackfoot. I'm really not that good of a speaker. I'm just learning my own culture and my language as well too here. So some of the names of the families that we lost were Ito Gitstaki, which translates to "went to make an offering," and Shangat Chue, Ebenezer. I always thought that was an interesting name, Ebenezer. And I talk about these names because it's, for us as First Nations, our names are very powerful. I was just transferred my grandfather's traditional name a few years ago, And that's made me kind of understand the importance of legacy, and reading these names off and understanding that they're no longer with us. It yeah, it just kind of hits home when you begin to understand, where you come from. Can I get the next slide, please? Yeah, so again, just discussing the events that were leading up to the signing of the treaty here. Again, the whiskey trade was one of the big things that was really affecting our people at that point in time, and that was really what propelled the RCMP at that point in time to come out here, and that's what our people were really okay with, for lack of a better phrasing, right now. Again, there's a lot of issues with the police nowadays. There's we don't necessarily need to get into that, but before then, the police, they were commissioned to come out here to get rid of the whiskey trade, and there's actually accounts of Colonel James Farquharson Macleod having intimate conversations with Crowfoot, and I'll leave a link with some of these names once this presentation is done, so you guys can look back, and I'll leave some of the information as well too, so you can reference some of these names and Google some of them yourselves. But James Macleod and Crowfoot had actually become really good friends, and they talked quite often, sort of in their own time. And James Macleod was, I think, probably the best example of what we hope to, I guess, what we hope to experience when connecting with someone from the settler culture, was that he really took the time to come out and understand our people. He took the time to learn the language. He was gifted a First Nations name, Stamix Odakan, which I believe translates to bullhead. And so his information that he provided about the white man to Crowfoot, and his translations at the time, he was very key in bringing forward the negotiations at that point in time. And so when the RCMP were coming there, they were very welcomed by a lot of the First Nations at that point in time, because they were doing good things for our people. They were getting rid of the whiskey traders, and they were doing some really positive things for our people. So much so that some of our chiefs had aligned with him, and really given him their support. One chief, notably here, sorry, I'm just trying to find his quote here, but he talks about entirely trusting Stamix Odakan, and how the police have come over and they've kept their word, which I bring up again today because obviously with the things that are going on in this society, I think that's really important, that was how this treaty was brought about. It wasn't necessarily just because of the starvation and because of the loss of buffalo and the smallpox and the whiskey trade. There were some good people on the settler side, that we have records of, that we talk about in a good way on our sides. But sadly, as we'll come to understand as I continue on here, sadly we'll begin to know that those aren't the leaders that often make the decisions for us. And so, sorry, can I actually get the next slide, please? Yeah, so again, I really want to press the events that led up to the signing of the treaty, that led up to our people actually, I guess, allowing ourselves to be put on reservations. I get that question a lot from people, well, if the Indians fought so hard, well, then why are they put on reservations now? If we didn't defeat the Indians, then why are they put on reservations? Well, our understanding of the treaty at that point in time, like I said, it wasn't a surrender. It was a sharing of the land. And our people had become so crippled by the sickness, by smallpox, and the restrictions of the government borders and the fight between the British Empire, and Canada trying to seek its own sovereignty at that point in time. We were caught in the middle of all of that, and nobody really cared about us. We were often looked at as the Indian problem, and that's something that you can Google right now, and you'll understand that Duncan Campbell Scott, he references us that way, and all of these things kind of led up to the creation of the residential schools. But it was these tactics of killing off the buffalo, of the fur traders coming in, and these illegal whiskey traders coming in and taking advantage of our people, because we didn't really understand the monetary value of whiskey at that point in time. And so what would often happen is our men would trade a buffalo hide for one bottle of whiskey, and then we actually made a joke about it in the theater show. It's a sad fact, but when the Indian gets drunk, it's two buffalo hides, that the settlers would get off of them, and so it really was a sad taking advantage across the board. And again, I know I'm just talking about Treaty 7 here in this territory, but these are tactics of starvation, of whiskey trade, of getting rid of the food supply, of intoxicating individuals, and then introducing sicknesses and illnesses into them, into their communities. This was unfortunately the dark history that Canada doesn't present to our youth and doesn't present to us in the schools these days. And it's sad, because I believe if the information, if the truth was really out there, it would help dissolve a lot of the ignorance and a lot of the tension and a lot of the misinformation, obviously, that we continue to sort of face and have this block towards building a connection and community today. It's sad that we're here now because of all of this, but thanks to the work that everyone's doing to bring these types of little presentations together, it's good. We're moving in the right way. But it's sorry here. Let me just come back here. I jumped ahead here in my page. Actually, yeah, you can skip ahead to the next slide here. Actually, yeah. Again, I apologize. That image is really difficult for me to even look at as well too. But at the same time, I want everyone to see and kind of understand, that it wasn't pretty, and it wasn't this beautiful romanticized picture of, oh, the settlers came over and we had a Thanksgiving dinner and we shared information and you guys get to stay and keep the land. Hey, everything's good. No, it sadly really wasn't that way. But to jump into some facts here, at the actual signing of the treaty here in Treaty 7, I thought it was interesting here that often the number of chiefs outnumbered the number of European delegates. For example, here there were 21 European 16 men and 5 women had signed on behalf of the Queen, and there were 46 X's from chiefs and headsmen from different Indian nations that had signed Treaty 7. So that's almost well over twice the number of people that were there. And again, just to illustrate the photo that we have here, this is just a stock image that I found off of Google. I Googled Treaty 7, and this is one of the paintings that came up here. I couldn't find the actual artist on there. I'd love to reference the artist here. I don't like just taking pictures and not given proper copyright. Yeah, but sorry. Yeah, so it's an interesting in our note that as important as this event was, in our winter counts, in our historical records, our meaning Blackfoot, uh, in our historical counts, we never actually referred to the treaty. The treaties actually isn't mentioned. We have all of these other events leading up to the treaty that were talked about, but the actual signing of the treaty itself, it's never really mentioned in any of our traditional winter counts. There's stories about the events leading up to it, and the obviously what we're talking about now. But it's interesting to know that as we did the research into this, that there was no real formal record keeping on our part regarding the treaty. So it's interesting that we looked at it as the way it is, and that's really the way that we viewed it, was the treaty, and it wasn't a surrender. So the events that transpired over the next course of the years, with residential school, we were believing everything in good faith. We had signed believing that we were going to be sharing the land. We had signed believing, that this was a deal where we understood ourselves to be allowed our freedom, our sovereignty was going to be kept intact. And unfortunately, there are archived records in Ottawa that a few of my relations have discovered, confessions from clergymen at that time who were charged with the responsibility of bringing the treaties back across the seas to the Queen to be ratified. And within that process, there's confession letters from a few priests about having rewritten the treaties on the way back and altered things. And again, that's just one of the sad histories that we don't necessarily get to talk about here in Canada. But those are one of the things that I'll add a little bit more information to as we go about here. And sorry, here, let me just quickly jump ahead here. So, sorry. This event sponsored by Tim Hortons. No, it's not. I'm just kidding. So the history of the treaties leading up to Canada across the board had these tactics of genocide, had these tactics of starvation, and it was really sad actually to kind of understand that once we signed, we were basically just that, the Indian problem towards the building of the railroad. And once these treaties were signed, the railroads were fast tracked through. And to this day, actually, I'm sure that's something that you see in the news and the media, that there's the First Nations protest against the railroads and things like this. It's not necessarily just an economic thing. It is really an ecosystem thing for us. These railroads have literally cut off migratory patterns and traditional hunting grounds for our people. And aside from the oil spills, the tracks themselves, they've really prevented a lot of our traditional a lot of our nature and a lot of our animals to continue on those traditional migratory patterns. And it's, sorry, here, I just got distracted here by this little quote here I wanted to bring up as well too. So the railroad is something that I think, from a First Nations perspective, is always going to be a bit of a contentious issue as we move forward here. But I really want to give an understanding of the fact that the railroad to us, that is the wrapping of the Mother Earth, referencing that prophecy from earlier. That really is the wrapping of Mother Earth in iron and turning Mother Earth inside out, watching that process unfold and seeing these tracks all across the land. And there's also prophecies from other nations, not specifically Blackfoot, but they talk about a black snake that's wrapping itself around the earth and that's going to choke it, and that's one of the things that we believe to be the pipelines and also we believe to be the railroads. And all of these warning signs that our elders had about not signing the treaty, and about making sure that we had land. That was one of the things that we were always taught, was to ensure that we protected our land. And that right there is at the heart of why we signed the treaty, was to protect the land. And it's to be perfectly honest, I was having a lot of trouble all day or over the past few weeks figuring out how to condense all of our treaties into, just a small little presentation like this. How can I do the treaties justice? I know a lot about our own treaty, and I've studied enough there, but at the same time, this is such a huge topic and such an important part of our history here in Canada, that as I was going about trying to talk about the treaties here, the thing that really kind of struck home with me and the advice that I was getting from other people was to really press forward that our treaties were to share the land. Our treaties were to protect the land. Our treaties were to ensure that the land will be here as long as the grass grows, as long as the rivers flow, as long as the sun shines, and those kind of, we don't think in terms of 4 years. Our people never had that political thought, of how are we going to change our world in 4 years? How are we going to change the system in 4 years? It was 4 generations at least, and that's really what I want to press forward here when we talk about the treaties across Canada here. Was they weren't surrenders. There was no nation at all that surrendered their territory. There and that's why you get you may have heard of unceded territories, and there's a lot of activists out there, that are protecting their territories right now because they are unceded and they didn't actually sign them away. And so I'm gonna kind of you can close the slide there now, actually. Yeah. I'm gonna kind of close it off there for the presentation at that point in time. I'm gonna leave it open to some questions here. It's again, it was very difficult to condense all of this information and try to figure out how to present it in a way that's palatable but also honest, because the sad reality of what it is from the First Nations perspective when we talk about history is it's not pretty. What happened to our people, the reasons why we signed the treaty, it wasn't nice. It wasn't because we necessarily wanted to share the land. It's because we were starving and we were being killed. And just an important note, actually, at the signing of the treaty here, again, just to further illustrate the point that this wasn't a surrender, that we hadn't surrendered our territory, there was well over 5,000 people from the First Nations, from the surrounding First Nations here at the signing. And pretty much all of the adult men and women were armed with multiple knives, guns and rifles. And an interesting fact, actually, that I just learned today, actually, after talking with one of our elders from the Gaina Nation, was he was talking about some of the men who were sitting there across from Colonel James and some of the other Colonel Macleod, excuse me, Colonel Macleod, sitting across from these other gentlemen. They'd have their blankets. And I'm sure there's some famous paintings, and you can even see some of those old black and white photos, of these older Native men sitting there, and they got a blanket, wrapped around their arm, and it's kind of falling down to the ground. A lot of those men actually had rifles underneath their blankets. just in case the negotiations didn't go in their favor, or there was something that that they didn't like. They were ready to fight, and they were ready to go to war at that point in time. And the the settlers knew it. James Macleod knew it. Um, Layered. I'm having a I'm kind of jumping over the place here right now, but it's it's something that I really want to press, not only not only for information, but also too for the First Nations people that might be watching this as well too. You know, I'm saying this because I want you to hold on to that pride. You know, that we were that strong. You know, that we were ready to fight and die for this land. You know, and that's what I believe. You know, I think all of us, you know, essentially, you know, newcomer, settler, wherever you're from, you know, you have a land, a home, you know, that you're willing to give your life for, you know, or at least I hope you do. I hope you're fortunate enough to be able to have that. And that right there is at the base of why we signed the treaty, you know, was our people wanted to share this land. You know, we we know this land knows us. We can teach so many people about the history of this land, about how to live with nature. These forest fires that we're experiencing right now, it's from a First Nations perspective, it's ridiculous because if you go back a few years and you just kind of Google First Nations traditional fires, that was a practice that we had for eons. We used to set these fires ourselves and take care of the land ourselves, and the knowledge that we hold, you know, our connection to the land could save the world. I honestly believe, and that's at the heart of our treaties. You know, is this feeling that I have, that I've learned over the last few years, you know, about my people, about our elders, about our teachings. The treaties across Canada were largely signed because we wanted to share this land, and we understood that the settlers were going to be coming and that there was really nothing we could do about it, but we needed to find a way to share this land. And I'm just going to kind of close it off there, and I'll let Iman take over here, and we can open up to some questions. But yeah, you know, at the heart of it, as we move forward here, you know, I think that's going to be, you know, the message that we really want to continue to instill, is that this land can sustain us, and it has, it is, and we want to continue to share it, and that's how our treaties. That's why we signed the treaties. That's what a treaty is. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Garrett. Honestly, every time I speak to Garrett, I learn so much. I first met him when he was leading the Mohkinstsis camp, and I think the best part about it was him, for me anyway, because he was just so open and so knowledgeable and just so humble. And I had a lot of questions. I had a lot of misconceptions. I didn't know a lot of things, and he was just so easy to talk to when he gave a lot of amazing answers, and he really put things into perspective. Me as an immigrant, a lot of things that I don't understand, a lot of lies, essentially, a lot of myths out there that exist. Like, he was just so open to it, and I know a lot of other people feel that way as well. So thank you so much, Garrett, for sharing your knowledge. I know it's incredibly hard to talk about a history of treaty making in just a few minutes, but I think you did an amazing job. So I really, really appreciate it. So listeners, if you have any comments or questions, now is definitely the time, and I will be sharing them with Garrett. We have a few comments here. Someone saying these images always hit me really hard, terrible, relating to some of the things that you had mentioned. Seeing the ownership of the land as a right, the people living on the land seeing it as an obligation to honor and care for it, the two contrasts.
Mm-hmm.
Here, thank you so much for doing this. I learned more about Chief Poundmaker today.
Ah, yes, yes.
We have a question from one of our members actually asking, could you tell us about the statement, "We're all treaty people"? What does it mean, and how do we non-Indigenous people do our part?
Um, Yeah, I was just having this conversation actually about that phrase with a couple native relations of mine, and that turned into a point of contention between us actually, because again, the political spectrum right now it's very tense across the board with everything regarding First Nations relations. And because of everything that I just explained to you behind the treaty, the false information that we were fed throughout our that's currently in the curriculum still, that gladly is kind of changing bit by bit as we move forward here. Uh, they kind of made me realize that, you know what, they don't feel like we're all treaty people because the treaties are sort of false, that the treaties have been altered, right? And so they said that we're not all treaty people, you know, just because of that fact alone. However, to balance that, when the group, I believe, from Quest Theatre and actually, sorry, from Making Treaty 7, we later partnered with Quest Theatre, and that became the title of our show, the children's show. We are all treaty people. Uh, that became sort of a unifying tagline, and that was really it. That's where the original phrase, at least from my understanding, it came out of, and that's how we closed the show for Making Treaty 7. Is we had a monologue that was done by Michelle Thrush, who's an amazing, amazing actress, and I believe she's the current artistic director for Making Treaty 7 Cultural Society now. And yeah, she's an amazing actress, and yeah, I'm not too sure if her daughter and a few other artists involved with that program, that show, had come up with that phrase. But it really was created to just develop or instill this sense that we're all here together. It was just a unifying tagline. But it's interesting actually, since it's been presented. Actually, I've had conversations where it's kind of become a source of not necessarily division, but I can understand now how some of my colleagues can feel how they do and a little bit iffy about that phrase now. So I hope that helps.
Awesome, thank you. We have one question here asking, what do you think would have happened had the First Nations not signed the treaties?
You'd all be dead. Yeah. No. Well, I there that's one of the things that the elders talked about. We have stories about how the elders understood that to be the inevitable result, and that's why a lot of our leaders signed. A lot of our chiefs that are sorry, let me just move that. Yeah, a lot of the chiefs really understood at that point in time the effects of war, and at that point in time we were so devastated with everything that was going on. Oh, actually, one thing I wanted to bring up that I forgot actually, that if people want to Google Baker's Massacre or the Marias River Massacre, that happened just 7 years before the signing of the treaty in northern Montana, and that is a massacre that equals that's that's comparable for. If I hate saying that because it's just like, yeah, let's compare atrocities. Yeah, yeah, yeah. This one, it's just, yeah, just a horrible phrase. But the Baker's Massacre is one of the lesser known massacres of First Nations people, specifically Blackfoot people at that time. And that was a large reason why we signed, was we didn't want to lose any more people that way. Just to give a quick summary, that was of a First Nations band that had signed a peace treaty with the U.S. Army or the U.S. government at that time, and they were mistakenly identified as a hostile band. But records actually go on to show that they were correctly identified, but the commanding officer, Baker, at that point in time ignored it, and he was a known alcoholic, and he issued the orders to go ahead and slaughter that band anyway. And so it was that experience with war, with poverty, with sickness, that I don't think we would have fought back. I think that we had our warriors there. There was 5,000 people there specifically. Again, just speaking for the Treaty Number 7, that we had 5,000 warriors there ready to fight in case things didn't go our way. But we had already been through so much that I think that this was, I think, again, treaties, are really what we all want. When you come down to it, we all want to be able to just get along, and there's very few people in the world that just have this bone to fight and just want to fight. We're not one of those people. We're very loving, respectful, and we have our main streak, of course. We like to hunt, but yeah, I don't think we would have fought back.
Somebody is just asking about the actress again that you had mentioned earlier on.
Oh, Michelle Thrush. Yeah, she's a great actress. Yeah, she did a great job on another show called Blackstone. Yeah, her daughter is amazingly talented as well too. She was in the show as well too. Yeah, Michelle Thrush.
Awesome. Folks saying thank you so much for presenting this information and exposing our uncomfortable truths. So folks, if you have any more questions, we have a few more minutes to go. We have one question here asking, has this knowledge been handed down, or has it been lost? I think it's referring to a lot of different knowledge, I guess, because you already know all of it.
Yeah.
So
the fact that I'm speaking it right now, I don't think it's necessarily lost. I think it's being in the process of being handed down still. I think, and that's something you touch on an interesting topic there. Actually, that's a responsibility that I've recently felt after actually going through the ceremony of receiving my First Nations name, my grandfather's name, which is actually Inukskini, and that translates to buffalo curly head. And a lot of people, from my understanding, there's a lot of sort of cultural stigmas around sharing your First Nations name. I know a lot of people, or a lot of cultures, actually don't really give it away. It's kind of kept really sacred. You kind of have to get to know them, a little bit better, for them to be able to share that name. I'm a bit of a different horse, I guess, so to speak, and I'm very open about these things, and I think that's one of the ways that we can shed some light and some understanding towards these cultures. Is that I'm willing to share my journey, and my process of understanding as we move forward in this. So a lot of this information that I'm presenting to you, I've just learned over the last 5 years, and someone had mentioned, that these images are hard, and these truths are pretty difficult, and it is difficult, but I mean, it's like ripping off a band-aid. Now that wound has been exposed, I feel that we're able to talk about it and kind of breathe the tension that we feel, in society. We can kind of breathe that away the more and more we begin to learn about each other.
Awesome. And I think she was just referring about knowledge on how to care for the land, but I think you answered that question pretty well.
Yeah, actually, just to give a quick example, actually, I spent my summer harvesting teepee poles, and I've never harvested teepee poles before. I've helped set up a few teepees here and there, but this was the first time where I had an elder bring me out to the timber limits by the mountains there, and bring me through the whole process of cutting down, peeling, trimming, curing, and then sanding, and then getting them up. We actually just did a teepee raising teaching with the Calgary Science Center out by the Buffalo Jump earlier today. So And then actually as well too, actually I know a lot of people that are doing land-based teachings now as well too. That's a huge thing that's coming back, especially with amid the COVID pandemic right now. You know, a lot of families are homeschooling, and a lot of First Nations communities are kind of taking the initiative to sort of uh, take their own education into their own hands, and in doing so, they're reinvigorating a lot of those land teachings and a lot of that land-based knowledge. So yeah, it's definitely being handed down.
That's awesome. And somebody was just asking if this presentation will be available to be shared. Yeah, it will be available here via video. And if Garrett has any, because you were mentioning some links, you can definitely mention it in the comments so folks can also see that. Another comment here saying so many of the young folks today don't seem to have a clue about these things anymore. I have 3 Native foster kids and I am trying to make connections, but it is not easy to find mentors who really know this stuff.
Yeah, well, again, that's one of the, I guess, ironies, for lack of a better phrasing, you know, that I discovered. I'm going to assume that you're staying in an urban setting, at least not on a reserve, because from my experience living in Calgary, that was a large reason why I started the initial camp. Was that there's 400 plus churches in Calgary and multiple synagogues, you know, and temples for other cultures, but there's really nothing for the First Nations people in really any major metropolis area across Canada or even America, you know, and in the States as well, where the city's infrastructures, you know, support, you know, a space solely dedicated to First Nation spirituality. You know, we don't have that. And so I can totally understand how difficult it would be to have three young kids, you know, and it was one of the reasons why I've returned. Actually, I'm actually out here on the Piikani Nation on the reserve, actually back home where I grew up, and to kind of both flee the COVID-19 pandemic, get away from the city, but also too to reconnect. And I'm really understanding that it's absolutely priceless, the knowledge of being able to the knowledge and the ability to be able to come out here and survive on the land, you know, just the process of being able to learn how to build our own teepee, you know. I can't tell you how accomplished I feel, how much confidence that has given me. And the next step now, you know, is to start learning how to actually hunt, you know, and you know how to you know get take the hide off and you know get all the insides out, all that kind of stuff, whatever, right now. So as we move forward here, I'm noticing that there's a lot of people around my age group, you know, for my generation, you know, and a lot of the older ones as well too, that are taking the steps to sort of bring this knowledge, you know, to the urban centers, you know, to kind of open it up so kids like your foster children will have an opportunity to hopefully engage in the culture as well too. So there's hope. There's hope.
That's awesome. Joy is just saying thank you so much for sharing your knowledge. What an insightful presentation. So if there's any more questions, now is the time, everyone. I actually have a question if you can answer that. And this is, of course, your opinion, but I'd like to know what is, I mean, I'm sure there's like so many things. So maybe you can say 1 or 2 or maybe even 3 things, something that you think non-Indigenous people, so settlers, immigrants, should do to perhaps understand Indigenous cultures better, to make a better relationship with them. What are some things or one thing that you think that we can do or should do?
Um. Okay, I got a few things.
Good.
The first ones are kind of fun, actually, and they just popped off my head. I was gonna say them as a joke, but you know what? Actually, no. I think actually you should actually take the time to watch a couple key films. One, Smoke Signals. Anyone that got the time, take the time to just look up a film called Smoke Signals, and another film, Dance Me Outside. Those 2 films, Smoke Signals and Dance Me Outside. If you can take the time to watch those 2 films, I warn you, it's heavy on the native humor, which means we laugh at ourselves and we laugh at white people a lot as well too. There's one scene in particular in Dance Me Outside where you know what? Actually, watch it. I'm not going to describe it. No. Watch it and enjoy. So start off with that. Watch those two little films. Those will give you a bit of an insight, into why we laugh the way that we do. Because I'm pretty sure that you've seen natives down the street and we're laughing at some of the most horrible things. It's we have just a mean sense of humor. My good friend, I'm gonna call her out right now. Cherish Violet Blood. She worked with us on making Treaty 7, and we were sitting out with a group of friends, and we were telling kind of bad jokes. And someone was laughing at us and saying, "Oh my God, you Blackfoots, you're so rank. I bet you'd laugh if your grandmother fell down the stairs." And Cherish and I just kind of stopped, and she's like, "No. We'd laugh if your grandmother fell down the stairs." And so it just, there's the level of humor it's kind of dark, but you watch those two films, you'll understand. And I think those are the gateways into what people can kind of do for, I think, across the board, is learn to laugh. That's really why I offer it. I think of all the things that all the questions that I've been getting, I've been asked this question over and over and over again. What can settlers do? What can non-natives do? Laugh. Don't approach this topic with any sense of tension. We're all here. We're all living. Understand that we have a sense of humor. That we're not the how. Right, we can be, right, but at the end of the day, we love to laugh, and I think that's at the key of everything that I want to instill today, is that we're all here to share this land together. And don't be afraid to ask questions. You don't know what you don't know, and that's okay. And I think, from speaking from a First Nations perspective, specifically just mine, understanding the anger and the tension, that we're feeling out there, especially right now with the current fight in the Maritimes right now with what's going on. We have our some of our nations out there fighting for the right to fish, that was given to them in the treaties. That this is a treaty right that they've had for over 150 years. That somehow, just because of lack of information and proper education, we have this racial tension going off, because people don't understand the rights that our people have, and that those rights actually protect everyone else as well too, because they protect the land, and the land is what, is really what is really what sustains us. And so as we move forward, I'm going to close it off here and just say, just laugh. Watch those movies, laugh, and understand that we all have a sense of humor, and yeah, we all just want land to live, love, and grow on. So, and we're here to share it.
Awesome. And we have Kelly saying dialogue plus education is the first step to bridging the gap between First Nations and non-First Nations.
Exactly.
We have one person asking you if you can recommend any Indigenous authors or books.
Oh, yes, I can actually. I just had them right. Okay, yes, right here. Yes, alrighty. So, all right. Again, because I'm Blackfoot and I'm Treaty, so a lot of the information that I provided was specific to this territory, and some of the books that I have are written by elders actually from this territory. The first one I have here is actually, yeah, so those of you that are in the area, in the Calgary area, this was our Bible with Making Treaty 7, Cultural Society. This, if you can take the time actually to pick up a copy of this, the library or wherever you can, this will greatly expand on everything that I was telling you. And as it says, the true spirit and original intent, that's really what it impresses on, and it talks more about why we signed, Another book here, actually, I have is actually by a relation of mine, actually, Betty Bastine, and this one's called Blackfoot Ways of Knowing. And I'll leave links or titles to some of these books as well too. Another one, actually, another relation of mine as well too. Actually, I don't know if we're related. I'm related to everybody on the reserve apparently. So yeah, we'll just yeah. But Ways of My Grandmother by Beverly Hungry Wolf. You can see that. And one of the books actually that I've been really enjoying over the last little while was written by a non-native guy, but he was he lived on the reserve here, or I'm not too sure which reserve, but he lived in the Blackfoot territory here. He married a Blackfoot woman, I believe, as well too, and he gained a lot of respect actually in the community. And his name is Hugh Dempsey, and he wrote this book, The Amazing Death of Calf Shirt and Other Blackfoot Stories. And this is just one of the few books that he wrote, and he references a lot of older stories in here as well too, a lot of the elders. And I had actually okay, so my sister actually recommended this one. She said I haven't read this one actually, but it's called what is it called again? Yeah, Stolen Life: The Journey of a Cree Woman. So there's this book, and you know what? I have like 40 books behind me. I'm just gonna leave like titles on the comment section of this afterwards. Actually, yeah, there's a ton, but yeah, we can start off with those, and yeah. Yeah. Actually, just an author off the top of my head, Lee Maracle. If you get the chance, look up Lee Maracle, Lee, and her last name is spelled Maracle, not Mi like miracle, but Miracle, Mar. Lee Maracle. She's a poet, a Stola woman from the West Coast. Absolute powerhouse. She was actually a teacher of mine at the Center of Indigenous Theatre in Toronto. She taught us writing and rants and monologues and stuff. She's a poet. She's a writer. She's just an absolutely amazing woman. Google her, read her, love her, and yeah.
I just left this comment here because I thought it was really cute. Everyone on reserve seems to be related. And I feel like that's because I remember I had this conversation before and you were like, that's a cultural thing where we're all related, even though we're technically not, but sort of.
Dude, I did a genealogy report in grade 8, and this was in grade 8. So I was like 14 or something like that, or whatever. And I had well over 140 plus relatives going up to my second cousins. And I can guarantee you that wasn't all my family. So yeah. I basically moved to Toronto to go find a white woman or somebody who I wasn't related to anybody really, actually. Yeah, that's why I moved. Just
Awesome. So thank you so much, Garrett. You have shared an immense amount of knowledge that I hope everyone learned from. And this is important history that we all should know. And we all need to do a lot more research. And you've also given a lot of guidance in terms of next steps. So different books that we can read or different movies that we can watch in order to understand more. And I just want to thank you for doing everything that you do for everyone, essentially, because you do a lot of great things. So thank you so much for coming on our show.
Thank you. Thank you. Oh, and check out Trickster. It's just being released out now, I think on Netflix or something soon. It's another good native show. Native directors, native actors. It's a great show. Check it out. Trickster. Look it up.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And everyone, we still have 2 more presentations next Saturday and next Sunday. So please make sure you check those out as well at 7 p.m. Mountain Standard Time as usual. And we will check you out next week. Bye.
Right on.